At 19 minutes to the top of the hour, football is where we start this Friday edition of the SportsMax Zone. For the first time in over 4 years, a new face will be elected as Trinidad and Tobago Football Association president. This as current TNT Premier League Football CEO Colin Worf and Eastern Football Association President Kyron Edwards oppose each other for the top spot in Saturday's general election. Back in March of 2020, football's world governing body FIFA appointed a Normalization committee to run the daily affairs of the organization. At the time, FIFA stated the Normalization committee was also responsible for establishing a debt repayment plan that was implementable by the TTFA to review and amend the TTFA statutes and to organize and conduct elections of a new executive body for a 4-year mandate. Now, the Normalization committee was initially intended to be in place for 2 years, but since then, there have been 2 one-year extensions, setting the stage for Saturday. Both candidates have spoken on the SportsMax Zone, and safe to say, they are equally confident.
I'm very confident in terms of the election. I would have done my work meeting with the membership, laying out a manifesto, engaging the membership, engaging stakeholders as well. And I'm pretty confident that our slate will be victorious on the 13th of April.
Yeah, that was Kyron Edwards there. Let's hear what Colin Worf had to say when he appeared on the SportsMax Zone weeks ago.
I did not build a slate based on votes.
Yes.
I built a slate based on competence. And I am absolutely certain when you see, because we're going to send out, if not at the back end of this week, early next week, the full Monty with respect to those individuals. And if you're not impressed, then you're difficult to impress.
So with us to give some insight into the election is journalist Lasana Liebird. Not many people in TNT know football as deeply as this man does. Lasana, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. Always great to have you on the show.
Good to be on. Good afternoon, Lance.
Yeah, can I start here by asking you, because I read your preview of the elections on Wired 868, and you don't seem to be too impressed with either of these candidates.
This is true. We're definitely hoping for something stronger, some candidate maybe we felt a little bit more confident in. But yeah, this is what we have right now, and I try to at least focus on some of the strengths that the two gentlemen have as well. But not the dream candidates, no.
Yeah, a provocative question here for you, Lasana. To compare these two candidates to the last time we had a TTFA election when William Wallace went up against the late David John Williams, pound for pound, man for man, how would you rate these two candidates against those two that we had seen back in 2019?
I would say that these two candidates are considerably weaker in my opinion. This is on paper. With all due respect to Mr. Worf and Kyron Edwards, who may go on to do some good things. The fact was before William Wallace, secondary school football league president for some years, he had done some work in cricket. He was a known person really around the football fraternity. Of course, David John Williams, W Connection had been one of, if not the most successful pro league club in the pro league era in Trinidad. So definitely those two people were heavyweights in a sense, whereas Mr. Worf hardly has a footprint in football before the COVID pandemic, and Kyron Edwards, not too much before then, and even before, generally speaking, in junior position. So definitely not household names by any stretch.
Yeah, well, in the next couple of minutes, Lasana, we're going to ask you to speak about their strengths and weaknesses as you just referenced just now, and also maybe to give us your opinion on where do you think the election votes may be heading. But can you, from an observer standpoint, give us an assessment of the delegates who will be voting? Because when we discuss these issues on the SportsMax Zone, we keep making the point that what the public opinion has about candidates has no bearing on what will happen. It's the delegates that carry the vote. So from where you sit, are you getting a sense that the delegates have a preference either way?
I would say just over a month, 2 months ago, it seemed then to be a shoo-in with Karen Edwards being far and away the favorite person. There was a lot of, I don't know if animosity might be too strong a word, but there was definitely ill will towards the normalization committee, for the period it had been in charge, even among the people on the ground. And Worf has never really distanced himself from that. He definitely seemed to be a continuation of what we've had for the last 4 years. But the fact is that recently there's definitely been a bit of a switch. And that says that Mr. Worf has done well on the campaign ground. As I said before, Karen Edwards has been campaigning for a long time, alongside Richard Ferguson, of course, we know. That might also explain why he seemed to be a clear favorite some time ago, but it's a lot closer right now, that's for sure.
Yeah, and what about Colin Worf's campaign do you think has caused the people to, of course, change their mind and lean a bit more to him?
A lot of it seems to be, I don't want to be too superficial in the way I put this, but a lot of people seem to think he just seems more presidential. I suppose he speaks to them from the podium and with the title of TTFA CEO. They are accustomed to seeing him in scenarios like that. He's clearly a very well-organized person, and I think the way he carries himself about, it's sort of easy to see him in a jacket and tie, I suppose, leading TTFA. Karen Edwards is more of a salt of the earth type person. That before was a strength of his. He knows most of the membership now. Already they knew him, but now I suppose there are some questions in terms of which person they think would be the best representative of Trinidad and Tobago football, and some people seem to think it's Worf.
Yeah, so I get the description about their appearances and everything, but Lissana, when you listen to what they're going to bring to TNT football and, we've been without a president, we need somebody to start putting things in place and just getting our football moving so we can finally just see some results. Which of the two do you feel has that vision that would get us, to the next step?
I think if you're speaking about vision, ideas, I think that would be Karen Edwards. Based on the conversations, he not only has an idea in terms of what we should do, but clearly he's thought it all the way through so that he could speak to you in detail about the Sports Science Center that he sees being formed in Trinidad, bringing in some sport tourism money, helping our players from a young age in terms of the mechanics and so on, and in terms of how he would adjust the elite football pool as well to considerably widen the pool and also kind of stop players falling through the cracks as often, right? On Worf's side, after all the scandals and controversy, I think people see him as a somewhat safer candidate, right? They aren't the bright ideas really to make any significant change in the way football is being run right now. But at the same time, I suppose some people see him as a safer pair of hands. Definitely has a relationship with FIFA already. And some people are concerned after all the turbulence of us, again, having someone that FIFA may not be too pleased with. Whether or not that should be a consideration at all, that's a different story. But I believe Karen has the brighter, more visionary ideas. But some people also see Worf as a safe pair of hands, and they like that thought.
Yeah, and I know Lance spoke about, the fact that the public opinion really doesn't matter and that it's really those that are trusted to vote. But I, as a Trini, would love to know what's the feeling like in Trinidad and Tobago, because whenever there's an election and it involves big sports like football and cricket, there seems to be a bit of uneasiness, and worse yet, we're coming out of a normalization committee. This is a big election, I have to say. What's the mood like when it comes to the people?
I think a lot of people are underwhelmed, to be honest. part of this could be because they're simply not household names at all. So most people don't really have a formed opinion of them one way or the other. So it's hard for them to really get emotionally in either camp. They're trying to figure out maybe what these two guys would bring. Of course, Mr. Wolf hasn't shared his manifesto yet. I mean, we're just 48 hours away from the election, so that makes it even more difficult for us to judge what he's going to do. In terms of with the football stakeholders, and we know that 61% roughly of the membership now are the clubs, Tier 1 and Tier 2. Again, it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of what they want. Generally speaking, they just want a well-run competition with as much funding as possible, and as a plus, maybe a well-performing national team. How these two gentlemen, Karen Edwards has been a member of the Pro League for some time because of Blackwater Rangers, and of course, Mr. Warp is there as CEO. So it's almost even Stevens in a way there, because they both have connections with the Pro League clubs, you know. But these are the talking points.
Yeah, and Lasana, our Caribbean neighbors, Guyana, came out of a normalization process as well, and their subsequent president, Wayne Ford, spoke about the process of normalization, steadying things in Guyana, and he took the baton and lifted things further. Is the stage set in TNT coming out of the Normalization Committee's administration for, having seen things steady off in some ways, for some growth in the administration to lift TNT back to the football level that we know it should be?
Well, I think two main differences between the normalization in Trinidad and Guyana. One, in Guyana, all the standing committees continue to operate: technical committee, referees committee, finance, etc. So football would have been, running, a lot better. And also, I think the normalization committee, from what I understand, kind of spoke regularly with the press, and there were regular updates in terms of what was happening. Whereas, because there's just the normalization committee running, not standing committees. Basically, 3 persons have been in charge of football for 4 years now. It's not as inclusive, and there hasn't been much word on the ground and everything. So in that sense, it's more like starting over than continuing, no matter what WARF says. I mean, I definitely hope that WARF is going to be making some significant changes if he takes over, because, football hasn't been running properly administratively. Although I would say that on the field of play, we have had a bit of a lift, I believe, since the pandemic. So there is something to be a bit optimistic about there. But a lot of work to do on the administrative front.
Yeah, which, Lasana, of the two has the more impressive manifesto, the more impressive outlook in taking TNT's football forward? I see Karen Edwards' tagline is Team Progressive, and WARF's tagline is Team Transformation.
Yeah, well, it's easy to say which manifesto is better. It's WARF's, and that's because he's the only person with a manifesto that's been shared publicly. So that was an easy one. But again, and even listening to the candidates when they spoke on SportsMax, and again, WARF speaks in general terms, and I understand, that may be because he doesn't have a long history in football, and Karen Edwards is able to go beyond that. So Karen is definitely a better football person. Some would argue that, you just need to be good at managing and leave football to the football people, would be I suppose, the retort to that, on behalf of WARF. But in terms of football ideas, I think it's easily Karen Edwards. I don't think anyone would say differently on the ground here.
Yeah, there was an issue, Lasana, with conflict of interest WARF's CEO tenure as the Professional Football League boss. He addressed it on the SportsMax Zone when we spoke to him. How do you think he did with that?
I don't think he did well at all. In that, to start with, we know sometimes these things are perception, right? It's not only about being clean and transparent, but being seen to be clean and transparent, right? And we don't fully know what happens in terms of the way WARF conducts his business. So we are a little bit uneasy. The people are uneasy about him holding these two positions and him being an employee while at the same time campaigning to run the entire thing. And Wolf's response on SportsMax that it was laughable to contemplate doesn't strike the right tone to me at all, because I don't see why it isn't a sensible question or why people wouldn't be concerned. And I'd like to think that him as a leader would be a little bit more sympathetic, let's say, to the concerns of the people beneath him. I do think it is a fair concern. I think in the public service, he'd have had to resign his position if he wanted to run for a government post. If the money and the titles don't matter to him too much, I don't see why he didn't just leave it, to be honest.
What are the biggest strengths on both sides? First Edwards, and then you can talk about Worf.
Okay. I think Worf's two brightest ideas to me. Now, he spoke about the sports science, right? He pointed to in cricket in, let's say, England and Sri Lanka and so on, and they'd have these kind of high-performance centers where they could get young athletes there and they'd look at their action and see where to correct from an early age kind of thing. And doing something here in Trinidad, not only to better our athletes, but also to better athletes outside of the Caribbean who could come in to do it. That's a fine idea. Obviously, it needs funding to be done. We'd see how that goes. But in terms of widening the pool, in terms of local football, right? The way it happens right now, we have national teams training at one location in South Trinidad at 4 p.m. And it means that children from North or East Trinidad, it's very, very difficult. They essentially have to leave school close to half day 3 times a week. And it isn't fair. It'll be even more difficult for children who are coming from Tobago. So I think it's high time that somebody looked at finding something a bit better than that. Karen Edwards has. I could only hope that even if Wolf wins, that Wolf kind of looks at that idea and tries to address it, because it'll be really something positive for youth football if he does it. So I think in terms of Kyron, that is something that's positive. In terms of Wolf, his management background has been played out as a positive in terms of maybe doing a proper audit of staff at the TTFA, getting people, let's say, fulfilling the job mandates and just kind of whipping the body into shape a bit. Before, we would hear a lot about people with business backgrounds coming into football and getting private sector money pumping again. That hasn't happened. We had Haddad is a big businessman in Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah. And the last 4 years, we have seen almost no private sector money come into Trinidad and Tobago football. So that's one bit that has gone out the window. But organization, as I understand it, is one of our Wolf strong points.
Yeah. So by what time tomorrow will we know who is the new president?
Hopefully not too long after lunch.
Okay. Okay.
And one more thing. I gather, based on your opening comments, that this one is too close to call.
That's what I'm hearing right now, yeah. That is too close to call. So I'm as curious as you guys.
All right, Lasana, we'll talk to you again maybe Monday, I think. We'll see we'll see how things happen, but we'll be looking closely at these elections. Thanks, man. All right, back with more on the SportsMax Zone after this.